Good evening, everybody. It's a little after 6, so we want to get started. Want to be mindful of everyone's time. Appreciate you being here. We are also live streaming this, so it's available for anyone that may not be here tonight to go back and watch as well on social media, on both the WCLE Mixed TV Facebook page as well as the county's Bradley County TN government page. So please feel free to share this with your friends after the fact. And if you have somebody who is not here tonight that wants to be, maybe let them know that right now it is live and that they can take advantage of at least participating remotely. My name is Adam Lewis. I'm the executive assistant to Mayor Gary Davis, and so I'll be leading the meeting tonight. But we want to try to be productive, right? We want this to be a constructive meeting, productive meeting. I recognize, because I talk to folks like you that are concerned about this issue every week in our office. It's the number one issue that we get calls about. When am I getting broadband? Why are they on the street next to me and not on my street? If there's a frustration in the room tonight, I guarantee you we've probably heard it. And I hope that tonight, with you being here, we can give you a better answer than maybe you've received before. No promises, but I do believe that if anything, you'll leave tonight with a few things. One, better knowledge of what's really going on. Two, maybe some avenues and some resources to channel that frustration if you still leave and are frustrated and not happy with the answers. And three, what you can expect moving forward. I'm very proud of the work that Bradley County has done really over the last 5 to 6 years. It started back in 2018 with something as simple as achieving what's called Broadband Ready Community Access or certification. That's really just a fancy label for a check on the box when it comes to applying for certain grants. And so it really started there, and it has bloomed into a standing committee that the county commission has. It's given us several local ISP partners that we've been able to see some progress. Again, it's a very slow process, and that's what I tell people. If you look at what we've been able to do in the last 5 to 6 years, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what still needs to be done. And we recognize that. For a long time, the issue was funding. It's incredibly expensive to lay fiber or to run fiber across rural parts of our country. Bradley County certainly falls into that category. I think at one point it was costing, our ISPs can correct me, $10,000 or more per mile to do that. 30,000, so it's gone up. Thank you, COVID. So you can imagine that funding was an issue when it's an issue and a challenge that takes millions and millions of dollars to solve. Those aren't millions and millions of dollars that we have in the county bank. So we've been fortunate over the last few years with our partners to be a part of several grants at the state and the federal level, and there's plenty more money coming. So for the last year or so, the issue hasn't been funding as much as it's been contractors and workers to get out and actually help do these projects. So all of that makes for a very long, very frustrating process. But I want to introduce a few folks that are here tonight that are going to be able to, one, give us an update, and two, hopefully help answer some of our questions later. We've got two of our folks from Nashville. We have State Senator Adam Lowe, who is here, that can also share from the Senate side, and then one of our state representatives, Kevin Raper. Dan Howell, another one of our state representatives, couldn't be here tonight. He just recently had knee surgery and is still recovering, so he wanted me to express my appreciation to you all for being here, number one, but also he said that if there's anything related to broadband or any other issue for that matter, you're certainly welcome to call him and reach out to him, his Nashville office. He wants to be available to you. So from our state delegation and from the folks at the state, that's who we have represented tonight. We've also got two of our ISPs, and there are a lot of ISP. I should back up. ISP stands for Internet Service Provider, right? These are the AT&Ts, the Spectrums, the VECs. So we have two ISPs represented tonight. We invited three, and two were able to be here tonight. So I appreciate Nick Pavlis, who's representing Spectrum Charter, and also we have David Murphy, who's here representing VEC. VEC is the electric side. They partner with a company called Twin Lakes to actually provide the fiber, but we'll refer to them as VEC tonight. So I want to make sure that I recognize those folks. Let me look at our agenda. Again, I just encourage you to, when we get to the portion, and you'll have plenty of time at the end, not at the end, but really halfway through the meeting, to come up and ask questions, raise concerns. The biggest reason for this meeting is for that very purpose. We already have if you want to write this down or share this with your friends, bradleycountykn.gov/broadband is a web page on the county website that we've created that will house a lot of this information. That is a page that will continue to grow. You'll be able to go back and see a replay of this meeting tonight. There are already some helpful links that we're going to talk about later with some resources that'll be available. As updates come out, as opportunities arise, we will update that page. And so we really want to turn that into the home, the easily accessible home for all things broadband. I'm fully aware of the irony that we're talking about a website. And if you're struggling to get internet, telling you to go to a website, so granted, but it is the simplest and most effective way to get information out. So hopefully you're able to access it. If you can't at home, maybe you're able to access it at church or at your place of work. So that being said, I want to go ahead and bring up David Murphy. David's here again, as I mentioned, from VEC. Both of these guys are going to share tonight on a few things. One, what is it that their companies have been working on? They're going to give us an update on where they've been, where they are currently, and as much as they can, share sort of where they see Spectrum and VEC moving forward here in Bradley County. So, David, if you would please come up. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me? My name's David Murphy. I work in the marketing department at VEC. I'm going to be as brief as I can, but just to give you an understanding of why VEC is in the internet business today, you need to understand where the cooperative began. So in 1935, VEC was created to provide electric service to the rural parts of Tennessee that had no access to electricity. So in 2017, the board of directors at VEC got together and had a conversation. Many of them had heard from you and your neighbors about a lack of broadband access. Consequently, they made the decision, like they did in 1935, to start the provision of broadband service. VEC is not providing broadband because we were wanting some additional stream of revenue. We were only doing it because our members asked us to. And just to be frank, VEC is not making money off of broadband. It's a brand new service for us. It's something that we started in 2017. And as he mentioned, it is very expensive. Right now, our average cost is about $35,000 per mile. The VEC customer density is somewhere about 11 or 12 members per mile. So you can divide that $35,000 into 12 to figure out the cost per subscriber. That's assuming 100% subscribership. So I said all that to say this. It is a very expensive endeavor. VEC is doing its best to get money from the state and federal levels to supplement the cost of this, because without the grant funds that are available, we simply would not be able to do it. It would be too expensive. But in 2017, our board of directors did decide that they wanted to provide broadband, and so we started right here in Bradley County with a pilot over in Hopewell, the Camelot subdivision in Bigsby Creek Road. We provided service to those areas first. And so what we do is we build out fiber. We put it on the existing utility poles, minimizes our cost, not having to install new infrastructure for the fiber. And then we lease that fiber out to our partner, Twin Lakes, who provides the broadband service to our subscribers. So like Adam mentioned, we do claim that the broadband is ours, but technically it's not really VEC broadband. If you wanted to be very specific, it's Twin Lakes broadband. We're just building the dark fiber and letting them utilize it to provide the service. Since 2017, VEC has been awarded a number of different grants. We currently have service in McMinn County, Meigs County, Roane County, Bradley County, Polk County, and Hamilton County, and Cumberland as well. We have been applying for grants at every opportunity. As you might imagine, the grants are very competitive. In the past, the amount of money that was being given away was very minimal, in our opinion. The first year that the state gave away money, it was $10 million statewide. The most recent time that they gave away money was last year, and it was $400 million. I'm sorry, 2 years ago now. And so the state does have more funding that's coming up. It's federal money that was passed through the state for redistribution for the specific purpose of the construction of additional broadband infrastructure. The dollar amount on the next funding round will be around $800 million. We do not have an estimate yet on when they're going to release those funds. We've been waiting over a year already. And so VEC is actively pursuing those funds, just like all the internet service providers are. And as soon as the state makes those funds available, we will certainly be putting in applications for additional areas in Bradley County. So right now we have 2 ongoing projects. We're about to begin a third in Bradley County. And so we've got an area over in Tasso. We have an area that runs between Oldwell, Georgetown. It starts at Mount Zion and runs over to Mahan Gap. And then we have a third area that's going to be underway here in the next few months down in the McDonald area. Once the funds become available from the state, we will be going after those, but I can't tell you what areas will get funded because it is a competitive grant process. We'll just have to wait and see where the awards are made. We do base the areas that we target on the FCC broadband maps. Those broadband maps are and have always been used to determine eligibility. We know that the maps are wrong. They've always been wrong. The FCC has tried to improve the maps, and they're still wrong. If your area is shown as having service and you don't actually have service, the only way to remedy that is to get on the FCC broadband map and contest the data. There's nothing that any internet service provider can do about that on your behalf. That's something that you have, as an individual, would have to do. But the FCC maps do determine eligibility, and we will go after all of the eligible areas. And so if it is shown on that map as being eligible for grant funding, we'll put in an application. If it's shown on that map as being ineligible for grant funding, we won't, because it would be pointless to do so. So that's where we stand today. And if anybody has any questions, I think we'll take those in a little while. Okay.
Next up is Mr. Nick Pavalis, who's here representing Spectrum.
Appreciate everybody being here this evening. You know, it's a good news story. Making a lot of progress here in the state of Tennessee, thanks to the state and our representatives, what have you. But the federal government also is making a huge impact, not only Bradley County but across the whole state of Tennessee. We were fortunate enough to receive a RDOF Rural Development Opportunity Fund grant for $96 million for 76,000 homes throughout the state of Tennessee that had no access, not underserved, but no access to broadband. And we're working diligently. We're in our 4th year. It's a 6-year obligation to get all the homes built. And Bradley County was a recipient of 1,000 homes that were not receiving any type of broadband. The good news is, the really good news is that once we're out there, in many situations, we're able to serve. If we're building to one home, we're able to pick up close to another home without the funding of the federal government, just because we've built the infrastructure there, and it enables us to go to the next home, even though it may not have been included in the original grant amount. So it's, and this is statewide, and we serve 72 counties in the state of Tennessee. So this is really good news in that so many other people on our dime, not taxpayers' money, is able to furnish broadband to unserved, not underserved, but unserved areas of Bradley County and the rest of the state of Tennessee. And another thing is too with the state, in that they are moving forward, which I think is great. if you are awarded a grant in a particular area, you have to build everything. You can't just say, well, just the, the homes that we want to build to that are easier to build to, whatever. If you receive that grant in that area, in, high on the, high on the hill, low in the holler, you've got to build to all those, which I think is great for the consumer. And so, the state of Tennessee, the federal government, what have you, are really doing a really good job. They understand the importance of COVID, really shone the light on people working from home. Most importantly, our young people having to be educated at home, telemedicine, what have you. It has really made this country, not just Tennessee, but this country, realize how important this broadband is. So, I think that we're making great progress, and hopefully within the next however many years, 2, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, that everybody will get the access, just like electricity, to broadband, high-speed broadband. And one of the things that we're doing, Spectrum is that, within the next 6 months, maybe 8 months, we'll be able to provide 10 gig symmetrical, 10 gig symmetrical to your home. Now, I don't know what you're going to do with that much bandwidth, but if you work from home, if you're telemedicine, education, the upload speeds are very important when you're working from home. But those are things that we're hearing from our consumer base throughout the 41 states that we cover here, United States. So we're going to make that available to all of y'all, everybody. If you're in Los Angeles, if you're in New York City, if you're in Bradley County, if you're in Knox County, wherever, you're going to get the same amount of broadband, and you're going to be able to have just great service. And if you work from home, whatever it is you're doing, that's going to be available. So we keep upgrading, always stay ahead of the curve, and let people have what it is they expect from us, because you should expect it from us. We shouldn't just sit back and just rest on our laurels, if you will. So there's a lot of good news, not in the state of Tennessee, with our elected officials that are really seeing the importance of making the dollars available to their constituents. So that's what we have going on right now, and look forward to any questions or whatever for the rest of the evening.
Thank you both. Want to move now to what I hope is some helpful information, as well as to give you some context. To answer a couple of things that didn't come up, but maybe is a question that we get asked a lot in the office, is how do you choose where to go, or who chooses where to go, right? Each of these gentlemen have talked about specific areas in Bradley County, but if you're in this room, it's probably not you, right? So I can explain a little bit of that, and I think each of them touched on it a little bit. What happens is these are grants. Nobody's coming in with millions of dollars. Even a big ISP like a Spectrum isn't coming in with millions of their own dollars. They're looking for these state and federal funds to hopefully match, to be able to maximize, right? And everything is judged based on the maps. The primary map that we've had for years is the FCC map. It's a federal map that's developed, and it's been sort of the Bible for just about as long as you can imagine. The state of Tennessee has made an effort to do their own map, and it is better, but still inaccurate. And just as was mentioned earlier, one of the resources that we will have available on the website will be a walkthrough and links to how you can go on and challenge these maps, because the county can't do that for you. Our state legislators really can't do that for you. The ISPs cannot do that for you. That's incumbent upon you as the business owner or the resident. And so most people don't realize how that works, don't realize that's even an option, but more and more people need to know how to do that and go out and actually go through that process if we ever want to see the maps change in any meaningful way. So as they mentioned earlier, they will look at areas where there's the highest concentration, because I will say a few things that they can't, right? There is an element of return on investment here, okay? You're talking about for-profit VCs, a little bit, not for profit, but they've at least got to be responsible with their dollars, okay? But you're talking about for-profit entities that are putting their own skin in the game, and what they're looking at is, where can I get my return on investment? If I'm putting millions of dollars on the table, it's not going to be down this road with 5 homes 5 miles apart from each other. It's going to be over here where there's maybe 25 homes a quarter mile apart, right? Now, you may not like that if you're over here on this road, but that's just life, right? So I'm not dismissing your concerns, but I do want you to understand that that's a reality that we're also dealing with. And so a lot of the areas that you've heard talk about, I consider them low-hanging fruit. They're the higher density areas. They're unserved or underserved areas. So before you check the box, first of all, it's an area on this horrible FCC map that shows it's underserved or not served. Now, does it meet, sort of our qualifications? If I say our, meaning if I'm the business investing in broadband, is it going to give us a return on our investment? If we're putting $10 million on the table, are we going to be able to make our money back, right? Something else that's important to point out is we're one of 95 counties. So these are all competitive grants. So we're not just competing, your street's not just competing for money in Bradley County. You're really competing with every street that's not served across the state of Tennessee. So competitive grants also change the game. Let me talk a little bit about what Bradley County has done. Several years ago, we received $21 million in ARP funds, COVID money from the feds. And the county commission and the mayor were very diligent on the front end to set aside $4 million of those funds for the purpose of broadband expansion. All of those funds are allocated. Not all of them have been spent because we're waiting for certain projects to be fulfilled. But that money is used essentially as seed money, right? Seed money, matching funds. Some of the grants that we've been able to apply for and have received with our partners in the past require that. It might be as little as $25,000, but again, when you're talking about a competitive grant scenario, the more the local community has skin in the game, that oftentimes boosts our chances. And so we've taken that money, a good portion of it, $4 million of it, to try to be able to put ourselves in a better position in terms of some of those grants. There are a number of things that are on the horizon, but our priority with those funds from the beginning has really been to expand reliable. These are the two key words: reliable and affordable access to high-speed internet. Why do those two words matter? Well, you can have access, but if it's not reliable, if it goes down when the wind blows, or it's off when the after 8:00 p.m. or a storm blows through and you don't have it for 3 days, that's not reliable. Affordability is a huge concern too, because everybody in this room, regardless of where you live, could go access Starlink today for the small, low starting price of $1,500, plus a pretty steep monthly fee. That's not affordable for most people. I'm sorry? $118. So our goal in investing these funds from the county perspective is we wanted to make sure that we're investing in projects that will deliver reliable and affordable broadband to the folks that need it most. We've also been very diligent that we have not wanted to fund competition, right? In some ways, and then I'm painting with a broad brush here, but these two folks are competitors to some degree. They may not necessarily look at it that way, but we haven't wanted to give money to one so that they could go in and overlap areas that would be in competition with another, right? That's up to them. If they want to go out and compete with funds that they have available to themselves, that's fine. But from the county's perspective, we've not wanted to do that. And so those are really the things that we've focused on with that $4 million. And there'll be more opportunities down the road. There's a lot of federal funding coming from BEAD grants, and it takes a long time. We get excited because we hear that Congress or even our legislature votes on these things, and it may be months or even years before it actually trickles down through the bureaucracy to the local level to actually be invested. And that's frustrating. And that's just government's fault, right? Government's not really good at most things. are really good at slowing things down and making it more complicated than it needs to be. So that's also part of the frustration and why this process takes so long too. But there'll be not only additional funding, but Ms. Hannah Goodson is here. She is the director of UT Extension. They are getting ready to launch a digital literacy program. There's a lot of fancy words and terms that I've learned over the last few years. Digital literacy is nothing more than digital skills. Think of it skills, how to access the internet, how to send an email, how to apply for a job, how to, and you'd be surprised when I say those things, it's not just a certain age demographic. It can be from school age to the nursing home, folks that need assistance and need to better learn and understand how to utilize digital skills. And so she's here tonight and can answer any questions along those lines. But for most folks, the issue isn't I don't know how to use the internet, it's I just want the internet. But as we begin to develop more projects and expand, that is and already has been and will continue to be a challenge that we have to face on the other side of the coin as well. So I'm grateful that her and her team are going to be able to step up and help address some of that. I've got a couple of handouts that you can grab afterwards, and this will be information that's on the website as well too. As we're talking about reliable, affordable internet, it's important that you as a consumer understand a couple of things. One, I have a handout that walks you through how to do a speed test at your home. So if you have a service now, whatever service that might be, it's important, especially when you go to challenge what the map says, right? The map might say that you're served with 25 megs, but when you do a speed test, you're in the single digits, right? Happens all the time. But again, that's important information that you're going to have to provide as the resident, as the consumer, to be able to sort of debunk some of this false information. So I have a walkthrough on how to conduct a speed test. All right, that's going to be really important. It's very eye-opening as well. And then the other thing is a walkthrough or a resource for you to determine how much bandwidth or how much speed do you really need, right? When we talk about what's considered high speed, we're talking about anything above 25 megs. All right, most people, and your announcement about 10 gigs symmetrical, a lot of folks know what EPB and what Chattanooga have to offer. A lot of people get really excited about gig speed internet, and it's fantastic. But the average household can get by on far less than just 200 megs. So I also have a resource that you can take, and there's a link on the website again, bradleycountykTN.gov/broadband, for you to go in and determine, hey, you know what? I've got this many devices. I've got Xbox. I've got 2 iPads. I mean, and it will show you, and you can come up to a number. You may find that you don't need gig speed. In most cases, you don't. You don't need gig speed. Many people, and I will include myself, I was overpaying. I was paying for 500 meg speed, paying a pretty penny for 500 meg speed, and I get by just fine with 200. So even for folks that may have service now, it's a good tool to realize and to use to see what do I really need, what am I paying for now, but it's also good to know what's my target, right? We're probably never going to see gig speed internet everywhere in Bradley County, but the good news is with using a tool like this, you don't need it. You don't need it. In a lot of ways, plug your ears, it's a marketing tool. It's great for businesses if you're pushing a lot of data, but for the average consumer, it's not necessary. So don't get discouraged if you find that you've got 100, 150, 200, 300 speed. You're probably in the right wheelhouse. Okay. Yeah. Yes, I think AT&T provides it as well. It's available. It is available. But I've talked to several folks in rural communities that, when am I going to get gig speed? When am I going to get gig speed? And those are folks that frankly may never see that level of speed. One of the things that we're going to ask folks to do tonight, not at this meeting tonight, but moving forward, is we want to begin to gather data. And let me be clear about this because people get a little nervous. We're not gathering data to share with anyone. We're not gathering data to share with these folks. We're gathering data because as we apply for some of these grants, there are things that we're learning we can do if we have the data to support it, to combat some of these inaccuracies that we're seeing in some of these maps. We can't get very granular, right? We can't get you know, we have limited ability to change the decision-making process. But what we've learned is that in order to do that on any level, we're going to need data. And so there will be on the website as well a way to collect your data, again, as much or as little information as you want to share. We did this several years ago to try to get a map. It was very unscientific, a map of how many people in Bradley County. And at the time, we estimated, and this has been about 4 years ago, that there were anywhere from 25 to 33,000 people without broadband. I've seen part of the process that we're going through right now. We received a grant earlier this year that's allowing us to do a pretty in-depth, long-term connectivity plan for all of Bradley County. And we've been able to pull in data that we've never seen before. And now those estimates, and I think this is largely due in part to the efforts that these two ISPs have put in over the last few years, as well as the county, that number is more along the lines of 5,000, and they break it out to a term they call BSL, Broadband Serviceable Location. So think of it as the address, right? 5,000 service locations that aren't served or are underserved in Bradley County. That doesn't represent population. If there's 3 people there, 2 people, 10 people, we don't know that information. That's where you all sharing that information with us can come in handy. But that's information that we're seeing really for the first time, and it's been more accurate than anything we've been able to come up with before. So that's a significant number. If you really put math to it, it could still be in that 15 to 20,000 person or citizen range, and so that's something that we want to continue to work towards and tackle. So when you see that, and you will see that we would like to gather as much information as you're willing to share. You know, what you're paying, obviously what your address is. That is an important piece. Probably don't necessarily need to know your name, but we need to know an address. We need to know what your speed is. It's helpful to know what you're paying, right, as we're talking with ISPs, because again, one of our goals is to make it affordable and not just available and reliable. Again, it's not required. I say that with the disclaimer that we're not sharing your information, we're not selling your information, and at the end of the day, I know some folks still won't be satisfied with that. We're not requiring you to send us your information, but it would be extremely helpful to be able to have those data points. Okay. I'm 3 minutes over what I wanted to be. We want to spend the rest of the half hour that we have really listening to you. And as I said on the front end, there's a lot of frustration, I get it, around this topic. Hopefully you've already heard some things that maybe answer some of your questions and some of your concerns, even if you still don't like the answer. But if you would like to come up, and what I'll do is I'll just, well, we're live streaming, so I really need to probably have you come up here. If you wouldn't mind to come up here, face that way, and address. I'll do my best to field the questions or direct them to the right individuals that are in the room. If you can, please be as brief as possible. I don't know that we have a lot of folks that are going to get up. If you come to a county commission meeting, we limit you to 5 minutes. So let's maybe use that as a rule of thumb. Try to get through in 5 minutes, but we want this time to be productive. And if you're in the room and maybe don't feel comfortable getting up and asking a question, you can certainly stop one of us that have already spoken after the meeting. There are also resources and contact information on the website, bradleycountykn.gov/broadband, that you can reach out to someone later if you have a question later, or maybe you're just not comfortable asking it in public. So with that, I'll open it up to anyone who would maybe like to raise a question, concern. Not everybody at once. If you could come up. The question she has, and I'm repeating it because we've got folks on the internet that are watching and want to be able to hear your question. Her question was, give an example of the type of data that we need.
Correct.
I would say the more information you can give us, the better. Now, we don't need HIPAA medical information. Address is important. The speed that you're currently getting. It would be helpful to know the speed that's advertised that you should be getting and the speed that you're actually getting. That's why those speed tests are going to be really important in getting that data. The price is helpful for us as well, and also information like the number of people that are in your home, because that'll help us drill down to not just knowing that number 5,000, which is just addresses. That'll help us get a better idea of how many people does it actually represent. Yes. Yes, we can get as granular as we want to, trying to keep it as simple as possible, but yes, really as much information as you'd be willing to provide, knowing that it's going to stay internal with the county. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to clarify, so we get the grants and Spectrum, or who owns that access now?
Depending on who receives the grant and which provider is actually doing the installation, in most cases they'll hire contractors to help them, but that work for Spectrum or VEC or AT&T. So the contractors will lay the work, and then they own it. One distinction that's different, say from EPB, Bradley County is not in the broadband business. We're not. We don't own any fiber. We're not operating any internet service. EPB is essentially municipally owned, unlike even the city of Cleveland and Cleveland Utilities. Bradley County is investing dollars, yes, but we own and operate nothing in terms of the network and the services that we're talking about tonight.
Okay, so Spectrum hires the contractors then, and they lay the line, but AT&T can come in and sell on those lines. Is correct?
Spectrum is the only one that can provide internet on Spectrum's lines. AT&T would have to run AT&T's lines in order to provide AT&T service, and that is in some areas that's a thing, especially inside the city limits. You've got multiple different providers to choose from, but it's all coming in on a. That's correct.
So I'm just trying to clarify to understand. So, okay, so who hires the contractors to lay those lines?
That company would. AT&T would hire their own contractors. You'll see a lot of folks inside the city right now. I don't remember the name of the company. Cleveland Utilities has hired contractors to lay their fiber network. Spectrum down in the southeast part of the county, they've been busy the last 6 months. They've got contractors down there, and so those contractors are hired by the company that's laying and providing the service.
So Spectrum gets the grant, and they lay the lines, and those are those customers. AT&T gets the grant. We're not getting the grant. Bradley's not getting the grant. I'm just trying to clarify in my head. So who gets the grant?
So I'll give two different examples that are in the room. I don't remember how many years ago it was, but there was federal funding in the form of what was called an RDOF grant. That is what most of Spectrum has done over the last few months, has been able to take the funding that they got from the federal government in the form of that RDOF grant and go out to areas that are unserved and underserved. You go out there, I mean, these are folks down off Hughes Lake Road that are thrilled to death that they're getting internet because they've not had anything other than these really expensive options that aren't reliable and aren't affordable. That's an area that AT&T isn't. That's an area that VEC isn't. Consequently, VEC's in areas that he mentioned as well that AT&T aren't in, and neither are Spectrum. So the only difference is once you get inside or close to the city limits, just because of the availability of infrastructure, there's a lot more competition. There's a lot more. Those are not the areas that grants are being awarded to. We're not seeing grants awarded to the middle of Cleveland. So the grants are being awarded to rural parts of the county and of other counties in our state, whether it be state funding or federal funding. Does that answer your question better? Okay.
Within the city limits of Cleveland, I can tell you that Spectrum is 98 to 99% built out. There's no gaps within the city limit. The obvious where we want to go is where people are not underserved. They're just not served at all, and that's right, unserved, and that's the goal, and that's what all these grants, whether it be from a state perspective and or a federal, it's unserved, and they have no access to anything. So that's where we're going. No, it's not the goal. That's where we are going. It is the grants are very specific in this is where you have to go. And when we qualify or when we send our paperwork in whether it be the federal and or the state, we have to say specifically these areas. And so they are unserved homes. Not underserved. Unserved. That's right. Big difference.
I was thinking, you get the grant, AT&T lays the lines. AT&T or Spectrum? Your Spectrum. Oh. Yeah, or AT. So whoever it is, whoever gets the grant lays the line. Okay, so how does, now I'm got Spectrum and now you're raising my rates. Or now it's 109, now it's 110, now it's 100. I don't have AT&T I can switch to because now you're pricing me out at 150, say, a month for it. So where's my competition then?
So let me answer that. There is no prohibition ever since cable has been in business that would restrict A&T, whom I don't want to mention names. I'm going to say any broadband provider can go into any county, city, municipality in the whole in the whole state of Tennessee. There's no exclusive. There are no exclusive franchises. We all operate under the state. We have one state franchise now, and it is open. If you want to go into Ventures County, Roane County, wherever you want to go, you have that ability as an ISP or as a provider to go there with no restrictions whatsoever. No. Regardless, no, I mean, I think it's a very valid question, but there is no restrictions whatsoever from the, in 2008, the state of Tennessee passed legislation that anybody could get into broadband in the state of Tennessee. So it doesn't matter whether it's a grant or if a individual company wants to get into the business, we can go anywhere. All of us can go anywhere we want to go, anywhere, and we do it. That's right, and we pay for it, and we do it all the time. I promise you.
But that's, and I don't mean to get so in deep. So I thought once somebody lays a line, so everybody has access to that line. So no, so that's that contractor's line. So if you price me out, though, I have no competition. So now where do I go? Because that line.
I think my comment would be, I don't disagree that your worst case scenario is possible, but let's continue to focus on getting served first, and then worry about if we're being price gouged. but I think what he was touching on was, and let's not use either one of these. Acme Internet gets a grant to run fiber down your street. Acme Internet owns the fiber. They're going to service your house, and Spectrum or VEC can also come right down your road and serve that road just the same, except they're not going to be able to apply and get millions and millions of dollars in grants. So the likelihood that they're going to do that is probably pretty low, because that goes back to the, will they get a return on their investment for spending full price for the fiber? And the reality of that is that probably not the case. So I think it's fair to say that you're concerned about not having the level of competition that maybe someone in the middle of Cleveland does with several options. That could be a real concern.
Just a thought. Thank you.
Understand? Thank you.
So I live over on Elkmont Road right off of Freewell, and I've been there for 18 years. When I first moved to that address, I had Charter, and it wasn't fiber, but it was high-speed internet. I was getting something like 300 meg service. Didn't have AT&T. So I'm going to say probably about 6 years ago, AT&T built fiber and brought it in front of my home. Guess what? The price of Charter did not go up or down, and the price of AT&T fiber was not impacted by the fact that Charter was already on the pole in front of my house. So just because you have only one service provider on the street in front of you doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to price gouge. The reality is there's competitors inside the county, and so the pricing that you're seeing is going to be countywide. It's not like if you live out on the very south end of the county near the Georgia line that you have a different pricing structure than somebody who lives right outside the city limit. So even though there might only be one service provider, there's still competition inside of the county which determines those prices.
The other thing I think is worth mentioning too in that scenario, just because they've run fiber down your street doesn't mean you're required to take it, right? So they need to price it and keep it at a rate that you're comfortable paying. If they walk in and say, hey, it's $150, more than likely you may not take that. And so there's an issue of what they call a take rate, right? They want that take rate, how many people on the road take their service. They want that to be as high as possible because, again, that means money. So I think there's a little bit of internal competition built in just because of that. But I do think, you raise a valid concern. I would hope that, that would not be an issue, but it's certainly something that's possible.
One other thing I would also mention, when VEC started doing this back in 2017, 2018, we actually talked to Twin Lakes about what pricing structure we wanted to use because Twin Lakes is up in North Tennessee. And so they had not existed down here in what we call the valley. What we essentially decided to do was to try and mimic the pricing that we saw EPB advertising. And the reason we did that is because EPB does a lot of advertising in this area, and we wanted our pricing structure to be in line with what EPB was doing. Even though we're not competing with EPB, we didn't want you guys to see on the radio or on the TV that EPB was given a certain speed at a certain price, and then VC was maybe a lower speed at the same price or an equal speed at a much higher price. We're trying to keep ours in alignment with everybody else, even though there's never going to be an opportunity for us to compete with EPB. We just want to be an average cost. That's what we're trying to do.
I guess the one question I have is, going into an old history lesson, I guess, is natural monopolies. They're talking about, AT&T can't run on Spectrum's lines and well, who's running on TVA's line? TVA is the perfect example. The natural monopoly that's out there. They built the dam. The federal government built the dam. They put those all out there. Now we're using tax money to build lines so that to get the broadband out to places. I have a problem, a worse problem, I guess, than most people, because the location that I want to build my home at, we're getting less than 10 megabytes per second. And where I now live in Polk County, I'm getting a gig. And it's basically, that gig comes down to within half a mile of where that donut hole is down there where River Point is. And I keep calling AT&T and Spectrum and everyone. AT&T is who the provider is now. Well, if those funds are going to be, allotted from the government, then why shouldn't they be shared or, a charge put on using that internet and allow, someone who wants to come in because they, you give them that natural monopoly. That's the only one that can come in here. That's why you had AT&T in the beginning that expanded. That's why you have TVA. And now you have people that are looking at getting, above, the 25 minimum, and it's advertised as 25, and I don't see anybody from AT&T here, but I have never, ever, not once, seen it at 25. And I've given the points that you guys made. Xfinity advertises 1,000, and it averages between 400 and 500. And I need that much because my wife is a doctor that reviews those insurance cases. Well, how long you can go. So she has to have the internet speed. For me, I just play on my computer and, I'm retired, so I don't need it a whole lot. But there are people out there who need it to be able to contact their physician to sign in to get in. And we're not getting it out there in the area. That's just like a donut hole. And there's a big subdivision out and they're not getting the service.
I think some of that is a philosophical discussion, right? I don't disagree with you. I think it'd be really fun to drive a fire truck. And our taxpayers, I'm a taxpayer. I bought that fire truck, right? I should be able to drive that fire truck. Never going to happen. This, I think, is one of those questions that we're not going to have a good answer for you on, because I think you're not wrong in the philosophical side of it. I do know that the regulations for, say, broadband are different than the regulations for electrical networks. So I think that I don't have a good answer for that. Well, because of lobbyists. Because of lobbyists.
You mentioned history, and so yeah, I can give you an accurate answer. I don't know if it'll be a good answer. It was one that you'll like. Broadband is not a public utility, and that's the philosophical answer that Adam's referring to. Well, and that's the debate. The debate is whether it should be a public utility. Now, mind you, I'm the guy in the room that's still on 2-wire, and I like it that way, because I know the minute they drop fiber down my area, the developers are going to jump all over every acre of land down where I live. So there's a two-edged sword to this thing, right? So I make concessions where I live, and that usually happens with live streaming TV, right? Like, my live stream's not great, everything else is fine. And I teach remotely, so I lecture online. That's my primary job. So I'm on Zoom a lot. I'm a remote instructor. The best way I can answer that is what got us here, where we are, and where we're going. Okay, what got us here was, I remember sitting up here on the county commission, and I remember the time where we used to be able to say, there's a consequence to living in a rural area, right? There's a trade-off. We used to be able to say that, and it really was true, because you had a choice on where you lived, and if you needed better broadband speed, you could live in an area that provided it. The problem is our housing crisis. You don't quite have the housing choices you had even 10 years ago. And after a pandemic where people were forced home to work, we're no longer in the position where we have as much discretion as we once had with making those accommodations. So the state and the federal government has acknowledged that we don't have as much choice as we used to, so we have to come up with a solution. One solution is to make broadband a utility. And that means to tax you, to take tax money, provide the infrastructure. Well, no, it's not in the sense that we would consider. No, I didn't say that. I'm saying that it's a different pattern of funds and how it works. But no, okay, you can get into the sidestep semantics, or you can listen to what I'm telling you. Okay, is they can tax you directly. Local government can tax you. They can build out the network. If you want to see that in a microcosm, you're about to see that with your public utility authority here in Cleveland, Tennessee, to some degree, because they've decided, despite the fact that there are multiple private offerings, Cleveland Utilities is going to get in the broadband game. That's a vision of theirs. And so you're going to see that. You're actually going to see where you're going to get taxed, probably, if you live in those areas. It depends on how they spell it out, even though you don't use their service. So here's the key. You get taxed even if you don't use the service. That's what a public utility is. You get taxed for public schools even if you don't use public schools. You get taxed for public roads even if you don't drive that road. That's the difference. Now, with this grant piece, it's not a perfect arrangement. It's not particularly clean, but in the sense that government has said, you have people in which, no offense to these guys, and there's a reason one provider's not in the room, they're not really applying for the grants, all right? You have people who the business model has said, we really don't want your business because it costs us money to provide you that service. So the state and the federal government has stepped in and said, we acknowledge that exists. In order to get these guys at least cost neutral to get that service to you, we have to subsidize it. The most physically responsible way that we can do that is through a grant process. Tell us what you're going to do. Let us compare your plan with this person's plan. Let us compare the cost of that plan with this cost of the land. And at least we're minimizing through the grant process the cost to the taxpayer to try to get that broadband expansion. Because as we as a society move to more communication and more connection through broadband, it's not just about you receiving broadband. It's about the fact that even though I don't want two-wire, if I need to get to you, I want to be able to get to you, right? We're connected in that sense. Is that a perfect arrangement? There are plenty of fundamental arguments for taxing everybody and building out broadband as a public utility. But what's different than other public utilities is we've had a pretty robust, aggressive, private provider network in the internet arena that has not only tried to serve the maximum number of people they could, they have fundamentally led in technology in a lot of ways that we otherwise wouldn't have come through had it been a public utility. The R&D's not there. These guys are motivated through a free market to continue to improve their product, improve their efficiency, and provide the quality and access so they can compete for your business. You lose that anytime you start a public utility, so that's your trade. So again, that's an accurate answer. It's not the best answer. But ultimately, at the end of the day, and where you're going is these grants are trying to get access to places where the business model, free market business model, does not work, okay? So it's going to take subsidy. I cannot point enough to what Adam said, the accuracy of you being available for these guys to target those grants and go after those grants and get it to you is really, really important because the maps are inaccurate. And from a state perspective, I often get the question, well, what are you guys doing about it? Here's my 3 short answers I give people. The first thing I do is try to make sure these guys aren't bound with excessive regulation that drives up their costs and creates problems, including across, and I've had conversations with both of them about who's using TVA's utility poles. You brought TVA up. Leases, I've had more conversations about pole leases than I ever want to have in my life. The second thing we try to do is to make sure that the money that's being used goes where it's supposed to be used, the unserved or underserved areas of the community, and doesn't get siphoned off for a third or fourth option for another part. And then the last thing that we try to do is to make sure that as we're developing, I mean, we're booming, right? We're growing, we're building houses and all those kind of things, that we are trying to anticipate where population growth is going to go. Because we currently have where it is, people are building 50 homes on a site. There's no broadband there. And all of a sudden you have 50 homes demanding broadband access because they assume when you move into a subdevelopment of 50 homes, it's immediately available. But it takes time to get it there. They know the cost per mile to get it there, the contractors to get it there. So we're trying to be preemptive with that to where those things coincide at a better rate, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I know that isn't everything you wanted to hear, but okay. Okay. All right.
So I know this is supposed to be an hour-long meeting, but by my watch, the people have spoken for about, well, less than 10 minutes. Okay? So I asked, after the monologues from VEC, Spectrum, Senator Lowe, I'm all about it. Okay. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the grant process. So we passed legislation that allows any provider to come down a road. And then we give these grants to subsidize it, but we say, wait a minute, if there's already somebody there, you can't apply for this grant. Well, why on earth would VEC or Spectrum put fiber where they don't get a $4 million, that's, by the way, local tax dollars is $4 million. It's around $7 million total with the grants, right? $4 million is part of the federal COVID money, so tax dollars. So we got that Bradley County received. So we got $4 million that was given to Bradley County, right? But we say to get this grant to come out Upper River Road, you'd have to say AT&T's not there. Well, they are there, providing us about 5 to 7 megabytes a second. Okay? Why on earth are they going to improve it when the two competitors aren't allowed to apply for the grant to provide the competition? And why on earth would Volunteer Electric or Spectrum go to a place where they don't get government subsidies at? Can anybody tell me why they would? Would you? Will you bring, VEC, will you bring fiber optic out Upper River Road where AT&T's at? Just a simple yes or no. Right now, as it stands today. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've all, right. Right. All right. For the grant, that's what I'm saying. Without a grant, will you come out there? So no, you're not going to without a grant. Spectrum, are you coming to a place AT&T's at without a government subsidized grant? Minimum is 25 meg. All right. Okay. Well, let me read a couple of emails. It is a free market. I want to provide you. Got 2 emails from people that couldn't be here, so I'd like to claim their 5 minutes on their behalf because they've asked me. So that's 10 minutes there plus my 5. Nobody's read this email out loud from a constituent, from a voter, okay? So, my name is Rob Jarrell. I am the head of the Electrical Services Business Unit with Simmons, an $85 billion industry manufacturing company with 320,000 employees located in over 200 countries. Just to be clear, my name's Daniel Marlowe. I live at 1930 Upper River Road. I'm reading an email from a neighbor. He lives in River Point subdivision, Rob Jarrell. He says, I have a BSEE from West Virginia Institute of Technology and over 35 years of experience in the electrical industry. I wanted to share my frustration when the decision was made to exclude portions of Charleston, Tennessee from federal funding that was granted to the state for broadband expansion. My understanding was that the committee was convinced that we already have coverage from AT&T, as stated, at 25 megabytes of speed, thus was not a viable candidate for funding without a grant. I added the without a grant. I apologize. I know that's what he meant, though. I wanted to take a moment and set the record straight and give a little context to my stance. I built a home in River Point subdivision on Upper River Road in 2013 and have been in a virtual work environment since then. I have recently discovered key issues when I moved in, which negatively impacted my virtual work situation, and also explained why homes in the area were undervalued and not selling quickly. First, the cellular service is very weak. AT&T Mobile doesn't work at all, and Verizon is weak at best. Second, there's no cable offering such as Spectrum. In the past, I had met with Spectrum's construction department several times to request their expansion into our area, including offering a signed commitment from several neighborhoods to purchase their services if they would expand into our area, all of which they quickly denied. I also had several discussions with AT&T, who finally gave in and agreed to offer their internet service to our neighborhood. However, AT&T emphasized that their closest repeater station was approximately 2 miles from our area, which was well beyond the recommended length. As they were using copper conductors, the signal strength weakens on a copper conductor per foot, which slows the signal down significantly in extended distances. This made the signal unreliable and the overall speed slower than published. The resulting signal was approximately 7 megabytes per second, which was well below the plan that he was paying for, stated 25 megabytes per second. They acknowledged the disparity and made it clear that it was a take it or leave it scenario. AT&T says take it or leave it. To note, since the internet speed was slow, I was unable to improve my cellular strength by using a Verizon home booster or any home booster, as it works off the internet, and 7 megabytes per second was too slow to use that. Needless to say, it was tough sledding throughout the workday. I was able to join the 21st century when Starlink technology was made available last year. I made the purchase, which included Starlink hardware valued at over $600, plus installation costs, additional booster requirements, and Ethernet expansion ports. All in easily over $1,000. I think Adam accurately depicted about $1,500 if you want to get Starlink. I immediately went to Verizon and bought another $300 booster for the cell service, and now, for the first time in 11 years, I have a technology package that meets the needs of today. From a quality of life perspective, I can now do online shopping, banking, streaming services, security services, FaceTime calls with grandbabies on calls that do not drop, Teams calls, medical records, etc., which were not available to me before. Although I'm enjoying these luxuries, many of my neighbors cannot afford such investments and are paralyzed without reliable internet nor cellular service. I wanted to note that I've been blessed to have been able to go on several trips recently into the Caribbean, yet I'm infuriated when I realize that many of these third world islands have better cellular and internet service than we have in the great state of Tennessee. We desperately need you to reverse the previous decision to exempt us from the broadband expansion on federal funding and to bring us up to speed with the rest of the world. And he asked to please advise him if he could be of any additional service. That's addressed to me. May have had a misunderstanding about declaring that it was a committee, but essentially, that's a great question. You've got a copy of this. I encourage you to email Mr. Durrell and ask him that question. Okay. Okay. I'll wait on you to give me my time back. Yeah, is this being picked up on the recording? Okay. If you'll
He is,
counting on my 10 minutes?
Daniel, I said from the beginning, we want this to be productive and respectful. I stopped you because I'm trying to address the concern that the constituent raised. If we could take a vote and I can sit down and shut up, but I want to make sure that those watching and those in the room understand, as we talked about before, the neighborhood that he's referencing, the neighborhood that you provide a map of, is in an area of the map, the FCC map, that is showing served and will never be eligible as long as the inaccuracy of the map persists for a grant. The issue of one of these gentlemen or Acme Internet bringing internet at their full cost to his neighborhood is certainly a possibility. There's nothing preventing Acme Internet from doing that other than the fact that it's enormously expensive and a for-profit entity is looking at the return on investment to go to that gentleman's neighborhood. Again, I didn't say you'd like the answers. We're just trying to be as honest. These folks didn't have to be here tonight. And what we didn't want this to turn into is putting these folks on trial or the county on trial for what we have tried to do to improve the situation. We acknowledged on the front end and continue to acknowledge there are holes, there are gaps, there are challenges we need your help to address. But pointing fingers and getting frustrated isn't the way to do that. So, again, you're welcome to continue.
Thank you. I appreciate that insight. So, the big concern that I heard at the very beginning of this meeting when the gentleman from VEC got up, he said, basically, it's on us. It's on the taxpayer to fix the state of Tennessee's map. Well, I'm here to say, Kevin Raper, Senator Lowe, this map's wrong. There's citizens here who will gladly provide you contact information for them. This is not the FCC map. This is the one from the state of Tennessee website. This is wrong, Senator Lowe. Representative Raper, this is wrong. I would like to see it fixed. I'm certain now that we know to challenge it, everyone that is in this area will go challenge that. and we'll be watching to see if something's done. I have a very short email from another lady that couldn't be here. I'm writing, this is Lindsay Taylor. She lives at 132 Old River Circle. I'm writing to express the urgent need for improved broadband internet access in the area of Bradley County where my family resides. I currently have 20 megabytes per second of internet through AT&T at 132 Old River Circle. However, with myself and 4 children in the household, speed significantly slows down when more than one device is connected. High-speed availability is essential in my household, as I frequently do remote work for a global corporation and am currently working on completing a 100% online master's degree program that requires real-time video proctored exams. In addition to having 4 children ranging from age 6 to 17 who would greatly benefit from having broadband access for school-related online activities, interactive lessons, and of course, gaming and video streaming services, please consider prioritizing expansion of broadband infrastructure in the area of Bradley County. I have a couple of comments, not questions. My comments are to address Donald Smith's concern of it being a monopoly. When you say to somebody, we're going to give you a grant to go into an area and subsidize this broadband internet fiber optic installation, but you can't go where AT&T's already at with a grant. You have to do it out of your own pocket. Fiscally, in a business sense, if you can expand to areas where you can get millions of dollars that come from the taxpayers, you're not going to come to us. You're just not. Rob's got it all documented where Spectrum's already said no. So how, I guess I do have a question, or I'll make it a statement and end my time. Can we work towards removing the restriction on the application of the grant to where they can apply for a grant to expand broadband anywhere? True capitalism. If we're going to give them tax dollars, why can't we open those grants up to any location? And I know you're not going to have an answer for that today, and that's a much longer discussion. Representative Raper, Senator Lowe, I know that's a much longer discussion. But we're frustrated because AT&T isn't going to improve their service to us. VEC's not coming there because they can't get a grant to do it, and they can get grants other places. Spectrum has already said they're not coming there because they can go places where they can get a grant. So guess what we have on Upper River Road in Charleston, Tennessee? We got a monopoly. That's it. And it's caused by this situation, this circumstance. And I know that the decision makers in this room are not the ones who chose this. They're not the ones who put us in this situation. Adam Lewis didn't put us in this situation. Senator Lowe didn't either. Neither did Kevin Raper. You guys work for private businesses. You have to make the bottom line decisions. I get it. But when the federal government says, or the state of Tennessee says, we're going to attach this restriction on this grant that says you can't go into an area that's already serviced with high-speed internet, well, you give them a monopoly by proxy, in my opinion. Okay? Okay, hold on. So I get frustrated at home because I can't hear when people are talking like out there.
But it's not classified. If you're given 7 or 8 megabits per second, that is not high-speed internet. 25 by federal standards is that's the standard. I mean, that's the minimum. So we can apply for those grants in those areas that are receiving that speed.
That's what we tell you.
And that's what the state of Tennessee has done for us and for you.
Good.
I mean,
But how do we, so I guess that brings us back to where we're at. Is I'm at all of us across the couldn't be. Period. Dated having second that state Tennessee broadband accessibility map says it has 25 megabytes a second. Don't. And I don't know how to fix that.
right.
I'll go challenge it. But I'm gonna end my.
But I understand that, but the state has done their portion. They have done, I mean, there is.
No, not right here. The state hadn't done their portion on this map.
Hey, so I'm Melinda. I live at 2200 Upper River Road. I also went to Starlink because AT&T was lying. Has anything done with AT&T on having them come out and verify to the state that they're actually providing that 25?
No, I think that would be great. But my understanding is that the service providers, other than actually reporting to the FCC, they don't have to provide any documentation as to how they arrived at that. So essentially what they're providing is what they advertise, which is yes. Okay. Briefly, right? Okay, cool. All right. Let's find a happy medium.
Yeah, well, no, listen, it's, I appreciate that, Daniel. The, no one's trying to dish you a monologue. We're just trying to catch you up with everything we see. And the truth is, inside baseball with what happens in Nashville, and I do my best to pull the curtain back so you know. But what I find out is everybody wants to know the surface and then nothing deeper behind what's behind the surface. But it behooves you to know how comprehensive it is and a lot of what's going on. A lot of this is federal money. We're bound by the FCC maps. The state map that was drawn, they're trying to perfect. They've said, help us perfect it. If this isn't true in your area, notify us. I'm telling you, the state's going to take your gospel over Acme right now. They will. Just provide that evidence. That's why he's got the handouts here. Like, I commend Adam and Bradley County for doing what they've done. They're giving you the instructional things they do that we need to be able to do our job. Because all we can do from a state perspective is make sure that map's accurate to where you qualify for the federal funds, and then look at how we can subsidize that when state funds come around. That's what we're trying to do and what we're trying to work for in regards to that. Ultimately, let's talk about the elephant in the room here. There is nothing to prevent anybody in this room, Donut and I, not to put you on the spot, Donut, tomorrow could start Acme Internet Company, and we could be in the business of laying open line fiber. And we could apply to the federal government and the state to come in and lay open line fiber for any of these guys to use and come on. No one's doing that business. If you think there's room for it, by all means, enter that business. Go into that business. But there's a reason nobody's doing that business, because there's no money to be made in that business. So that's what, we talk a lot about functional monopolies. That's why Starlink exists, right? Because there's some people who feel like they need more choices, and they're willing to pay more for another choice. It was HughesNet before that. I owned property down there off Spring Place Road. The only thing that was going to work there was HughesNet. I'm on the same AT&T service you guys are on right now where I'm at. And I'm in the map where I'm not part of the donut hole. It says that our service isn't enough, and I'm still not part of the growth plan. But I'm okay. I've told them I'm fine. I don't complain about it. We're okay. But ultimately, that's what's happening here. You have private providers that are doing their best to get into areas that it's not profitable for them right now. And the biggest cost is infrastructure. It's the same way with pharmaceuticals. The hardest thing is getting the drug to market, right? There's a lot of money in getting the infrastructure to develop the drug and to get it to market and to get it to you. Anything that requires R&D to expand, that's the natural capitalistic angle that it takes. But there's nothing to prevent anybody from starting an open line internet company to come lay fiber, just nobody's in that business and trying to do it. None of those people are applying for those grants at the moment. Who is applying for the grants are our friends at VEC, our friends at Charter Spectrum, who are working diligently with us as we communicate on your behalf. These folks want you. They want you out there, and they want you affordable. I mean, that's the message we carry. They want you out there. They want you affordable. How do we help you get out there? How do we help you make you accessible and affordable? Just what Adam noted earlier. That's the dialogue we're having. What I'll say is Charter, VEC have been amazing partners in trying to do that, oftentimes to their own business expense. That goes unseen. But they're doing their due diligence to get there. We hope as a state that we can continue to fund in excess to what the federal government's doing. We hope you guys will help us fix the maps.
the question was, how do we fix the map if we no longer have AT&T to prove that it's inaccurate? Back to the speed test. You don't, they're gone. They left the neighborhood? You left AT&T. Yeah, that's going to be a challenge. Does one of your neighbors potentially have somebody have AT&T? You do? Okay, so someone could. Yeah, yeah. I believe you. I believe you. I really do. And I hear it all the time. Okay. Hmm. Yes. Short answer.
One thing I would like to clarify, up until this point, VEC has not applied on a single grant that used the state of Tennessee map. All the maps that we have looked at thus far are the federal FCC maps, and it has on the FCC broadband map a link there that you can click on that will let you contest the data. I don't know anything about the state map other than it exists. I can tell you anything that includes federal funds, any grant that includes federal funds is going to use the federal map. So the state funds, if and when they give some, would use the state map, but the BEAD money, that 800 million that I talked about earlier, that's federal funds, so it's going to use the FCC map.
Okay, my name's Jennifer Gregory, and I live on Upper River Road. I currently take care of my parents, who are both elderly, and my father just recently got to where he can't walk. He is on a heart monitor. He has to like shoot signal to the doctor's office, and that's spotty. Sometimes they have to take the whole machine in for the doctor to see what's been going on. We have AT&T service right now. My mother did have, or they did have AT&T telephone. They had a landline for a long time, but then they switched the landlines, AT&T did, and then it would go out. It didn't even work half the time. So what we did was I said, okay, my parents are on a set income, and I handle their finances for them. And I said, let's just do away with that phone and let's get you cell phones. They couldn't afford that, so I pay for it out of my own pocket. So they can get 911 service and be able to contact somebody if something happens to my dad. And my mom's a little bitty short woman who can't lift my dad, who's like 6'3". Yeah. So they are currently on AT&T network too in order to get internet service. So if the cell service isn't working, then they can try to make a phone call through the internet. Half the time that doesn't work. So we're just kind of stuck. I did see your signs down our road about filling out for go to Twin Lakes. I did that almost every month for 3 different addresses. I never heard from anybody. And I can understand if you don't think you're going to be putting anything out that direction, that's fine, but it would be nice to hear something about it, because I even, on one of the ones that I filled out, I said, please contact me. I would like to talk with someone, and I never heard anything from anybody. I'm sorry I'm taking so much time, but it would be nice to have another option. And that's why I just heard about this meeting today. I didn't even know about this broadband thing I didn't even know about. That the maps were wrong. I just found that out today. If I'd known that, I'd have been doing exactly what y'all want me to do in order to get it, because I've got 3 different addresses I can do that for.
Well, and right there really sums up why we wanted to host this meeting. I hope I'll come back and open it back up if somebody else has a question too. You know, I hope you don't feel like we just sat and preached at you. You know, there's a lot of answers that even I don't like to these questions, and it's incredibly frustrating, and it doesn't solve the problems that you're facing and that your friends and family are facing. But I hope, if nothing else, I hope it was educational. It helps you understand the hurdles that have to be overcome. I hope it helps you understand the challenges. I hope it helps you understand what your local government is doing. You know, we want to provide as much information, right? There's never so much. There's no such thing as too much information, right? I wish that these guys could just go to Nashville and wave a magic gavel and fix the map. But the reality of it is, the way the system is set up, we're going to have to get involved. You and I and your family and your neighbors, we're going to have to get involved, and we're going to have to make phone calls and send emails and go challenge maps and fill out questionnaires. And that's what we're going to have to do if we want to see any meaningful change. And it's going to take, I can tell you right now, we can do all that, and it's still going to take longer than we want. But does anybody else have a question or comment? Yes, sir. And then we're going to get Commissioner. I'm sorry? Bradley, here's the website, okay? And this, I've got some homework. So there's been some things that have been asked for on that website. So if you go to it right now, it won't have some of those things, I promise, but give us some time. It's bradleycountytn.gov/broadband. You also can go to the main page, bradleycountytn.gov, or Google Bradley County Government. Up comes the homepage. It'll be under services, but bradleycountytn.gov/broadband. We'll create some of those walkthroughs. We'll make sure you got access to the federal stuff. You can get, trust me, you can get in the weeds on this and learn as much as you want about it, and we'll try to provide as much access to those resources in one place as we can. Commissioner Gilbert.
First of all, thank you. Thank y'all for being here. There's some hard questions that came across you. Commissioner in the 4th District, my sister-in-law actually got charter, and I get to talk to my niece FaceTime now, and it's pretty amazing. Everybody here, well, I'm sure would like to. So we're talking about a donut hole. This was kind of funny. I'm sitting back here listening to it. My dad always said, always look into the donut, not the hole. Is there any possible way that you can go from north to south, east to west, across that donut hole? Like on Upper River, is it Upper River or Lower? Upper River Road, is there a part of Upper River that you can take in? And you can go to Polk County? No way of doing that.
There's a difference in the old copper technology, which AT&T is using. Copper technology is outdated, but it works more or less like a spider web. If there's a copper line down through there, you can just tap into it, kind of like we do with electricity, and run a side circuit, and it'll get to you. The problem that you have inherent with the copper technology, the farther that you get from that repeater, the worse the signal becomes, and you are sharing bandwidth because it's on. The more people who are using it, the less bandwidth will be available. Fiber is a point-to-point connection. So if you have fiber, that strand, that tiny hair-like strand of fiber, it starts at the side of your home, and it goes across the VEC power line all the way back to the electronics inside of our substation house, uninterrupted, and it's not shared with any other person. So it's not possible, even if we had fiber running through there, to tap into it. The fiber would have to be intentionally built from the substation house directly to you. So to answer your question, it's not as simple as, do you have a fiber line there? Because in a lot of cases, there may be fiber there, but it may not be intended for broadband internet. VEC uses fiber to communicate with our substations, and so it's not something that we could simply tap into to expand the service. We have to design and build a broadband network that would connect to your home.
How Y'all doing anything like that, running just a tree and then eventually branching off? Is Cleveland Utilities doing anything like that? You're actually just what your grant is. Thank you, Adam.
Anyone else? We don't have to rush out. I said I wanted to keep it to an hour, but if you all want to stay, we can keep talking. That's why we're here.
So I have the privilege for the last 20 years being with Spectrum Charter of covering 72 counties in the state of Tennessee. And I'm going to say this, there is no county that has been more involved in broadband expansion in the last 6 to 7 years than Bradley. I mean, they are really not on us, but they want us and they engage us, VEC, us and AT&T, to make broadband accessible to their constituents. In the state of Tennessee, going back to Bill Haslam, when he started first year, $10 million, and that's a pebble in the lake, if you will. But the state has stepped up, the federal government has stepped up to enable us to make it profitable for us to provide broadband to Bradley County. And it's happening. I mean, we've already served, we've already been out to 1,200 people that had no access whatsoever. So don't think that nothing is being done, because it is. And we get the proper amount of pressure to, what are you doing? Where are you at? And you guys don't hear that. But they really do care. And they are, I don't want to say putting pressure on us, but they're certainly encouraging us to make every effort that we can through the federal and the state grants to bring broadband to Bradley County. So I know it's frustrating, and I understand what you're saying about why can't we have, two providers on the same lines. But let me tell you this. If you'll think back, and I'm going to date myself here, was it 7 or 8 years ago that we had the horrific tornadoes that went through Bradley County? And so at the end of the day, from a private enterprise, we report in 12-week cycles, and I worked in Louisiana for 7 years as well, and they have horrible hurricanes and what have you. But at the end of the day, they're like, well, why aren't you responsible? Why aren't you, everybody's pointing fingers this way. I mean, we report to 12-week cycles to Wall Street, and we have to be responsible for what it is we do. We don't want to rely on another provider to say, well, we're going to do that, and then it not get done, because then it comes back on them or us. So, I mean, I hope that kind of answers, your question as to why you can't share lines. It just, in private enterprise, it just doesn't work that way. Yes, sir. Right.
And that the reason that I moved there was because I can't build a house on my property in Bradley County because I can't get broadband service. But there, in the middle of nowhere, on the river, I get a gig, which turns out to be between 400 and 500, which is plenty, like you said. Probably make do with 200. Because the wife, when we were living in Florida before we retired up here, She was making do with 100 with Spectrum, and Spectrum was great. And the biggest thing is that out there in the what we call out there in the country, but there's River Point across the street. There's probably 10,000 homes out there that are affected by this, and they're getting an average of under 10 every day, all day long, and it's actually getting worse.
Also, this area we're talking about, Upper River Road, River Point, they got broadband within less than half a mile. They came almost to Upper River Road to stop. And if they come down another half a mile, they got two subdivisions, River Point, River Bend Estate. On our property alone, on Old River Circle, there's 15 houses that would get on it. And it's just up on the hill.
The wisdom of the General Assembly just this past year, when the grants will be let, we have to, if we get an area, whatever it is, high on a hill, low on a holler, we have to build everything. You don't get to cherry pick the really, areas that will make a difference, financially make sense. So the General Assembly in their wisdom has said, if you're going to do it, by golly, you're going to do it. So, and that's going to really help the state of Tennessee. So anyway, I'll shut up.
Okay. If they it's just a part of the grant process, but I think the question becomes, regardless of who we're talking about, is the information that they're reporting to the FCC accurate? Yeah. The question is about the fact that yes. Ask it again. So the question is, who do you need to contact regarding inaccurate data from AT&T as an elected official? All of them. I mean, I think they need to continue. They need to continue to hear, but some context, right? If we're talking about federal programs, federal dollars, it's federal map. So that contact Congressman Fleischman, our senators, our federal delegation, right? If it's state map, if it's state dollars, if it's state programs, contact these guys that were here tonight. You know, what I've learned that they're really good about is they'll vote for something with the best intentions and the way it was sold to them, and then government does what government does and mucks it up and makes it full of bureaucracy and hoops to jump through. A lot of times these guys don't know that happens. They're out bragging about this or that they passed this year, and come to find out it's a hot mess. Communicate with them. Communicate with them. You can certainly call the mayor's office, come to a county commission meeting, but right. These decisions aren't made at the local level. They're made in Nashville and they're made in D.C. And so that's a big reason why we wanted this meeting tonight, is because your county government has, as you said, thank you, stepped up in the last 5 or 6 years to try to tackle this thing. We can't do it by ourselves. county government can't do it by ourselves, so we need the help of the citizens. So I think to answer your question, contact the appropriate person, and not just you, right? Not just you. 10 times, get 10 of your neighbors to make that same phone call or to send that right letter. Volume speaks even louder than one person who might speak 10 times.
So if you're going to contact somebody to talk to them about the inaccuracy of AT&T's data, there's something that you need to know first, because I wouldn't want you to make that phone call and not be informed. So in 2022, I think is when they updated the FCC map. Before the update, they looked at very large census blocks. And the way the FCC map worked, if even one single address inside of that census block had access to the 25.3 minimum threshold, the entire census block was ineligible for a grant. So it only took one address. So while AT&T may have 25.3 as their publicized speed, that doesn't necessarily mean that's why you guys were ineligible for the grant. It could have been that in the very bottom corner of that census block closest to Cleveland, there was one address that actually did have, yeah. I just wouldn't want you to reach out to your elected officials and say, hey, we're not able to get this because AT&T did this, because it may not necessarily be true that that's what happened. It could just be an artifact from when they were using those census blocks and it was ineligible in the census block. Now that they've updated the FCC map, it does look at street level data. If you were to log on to the FCC map today, there's going to be a dot at your address, and that dot will either be green or red. If it's red, that means you don't have access to 25.3 broadband. If it's green, it means that you do, and you can click on that dot, and it will show you the supposed service provider and what speed they're advertising. Now, I use the word advertising because that does not, as you all know, necessarily mean that's what you're going to get. But it does show that the speed that they're advertising. So I would just reiterate, it would be worth your time to log into that FCC map and look at the current version to see if it still has good data or bad data. Can't really see it. Well, so the answer to that question is the last funding was actually in the fall of 2022. So we've not had another opportunity to get funds for Bradley County since then.
Started doing, just to reiterate for the camera, we're part of the reason we have the Tennessee map, and part of the reason in the next grant cycle has been communication from the state that the previous maps aren't helping us get service out.
Let me ask you a question. The map that you're looking at on your phone that shows your neighborhood in red dots, what map is that? Okay, so what you're looking at is the FCC map, the national map based on the national programs, and this is important to go back and revisit. More than likely, why that whole neighborhood is in red is because it's part of a census block, and I want to repeat what David said earlier, because you need to just understand how dysfunctional this system works and how bad it is. Okay, a census block might be multiple neighborhoods, okay? And if AT&T or Spectrum or Acme Internet, we need to start using Acme Internet reports to the FCC that one home in that census block, there might be 40, there might be 50. If one home is served with 25 meg speed, then the map assumes and the FCC assumes that the entire block, all 50 homes, are served, when in actuality and in reality, they're not. So that becomes an issue that if you drill down, AT&T, Acme is not lying about the service. Now, are you getting what you paid for? That's a different discussion, right? But when it comes to what's on the map versus what they're reporting, the way the map is set up, it's not home by home by home. It's a block of homes, a block of neighborhoods, a block of streets. And the way that it's been this way for a while, the way that map is set up, if just one home or two homes or three homes or one street, maybe one street over here does, but these other 6 streets in that same neighborhood or that same census block who don't have any fiber, it still shows that they're, so hopefully we've demonstrated why the accuracy of the maps is so important, because so much of it depends on any provider we're talking about, whether or not they can get the funding to come fix, hopefully, the problems that you're facing. The map that you're holding up is the state Tennessee broadband accessibility map, okay? The state is, I would argue the state has done, the state's better. No. The state map is also inaccurate. I would say it's less, it's better than the feds because they've done more local level research, but it still needs a lot of help. And they know that. They know it's not perfect. It's the Sure.
So I just want to say, Adam, good conversation, good debate, good. We've ran 2 hours instead of 1, and I appreciate you staying. Senator Lowe, I appreciate you staying. Donut, thank you for being here. Troy Weathers, you're still here. Thank you guys for giving up your evening. I appreciate y'all staying this long. And I truly think that the guide for how to challenge the map will really help some Bradley County residents. So thank you, Adam. I appreciate you.
We appreciate y'all being here. I'll say, even after you go do that, it's not going to be an overnight solution, but it's small steps in the right direction, and a lot of us doing that together that I think will ultimately fix the problem. So, if there's anything else, we'll kind of hang around a little bit afterwards. Yes, ma'am. Yes. So before I leave, a couple of things as we wrap up here. There are a couple of handouts. This is information that will also be on the website, but you're welcome to take a couple of the handouts that talked about some of the information, some of the walkthroughs, how to do a speed test, how to determine how much bandwidth or speed you really need. That's what's up here. But the big takeaways we want, more than anything, please just stay informed. All right, follow the county social media, bookmark that website as it updates, and as we can update it, we'll put more information on there. Share this information with your friends and family. Right? Share this video tonight. I don't know many people that will watch a 2-hour meeting, but if they're really interested and really frustrated, maybe they will, and hopefully they hear some good answers. But all that to say, we've got to have your help. It is frustrating. We're frustrated with you, believe it or not. And although we've had progress and we're proud of that progress, it's not nearly enough to tackle the problem that we're facing. So please stay involved, stay in the know, stay in touch with us, and if there's anything that local government can do to help you on this issue or any, please reach out. We try to be as available. A great start. That's one of the things I didn't mention this yeah. He's asking about sending out public mailers. Yeah. Sure. Well, and again, that's where I need your help too. I mean, this doesn't need to be the last one of these. It doesn't need to be the last interaction with some of these stakeholders. But this was part of the grant process. Yes, we've had similar meetings before that weren't a part of it, and so we'd certainly be open to doing it again. But whatever you can do to help us spread the word of what needs to be done, that interaction. And again, I know the irony of all this. It's so easy to do this electronically, right? It's easy to email back and forth, to put information on social media, to put it on a website. So hopefully that's not too big of a hindrance. But if you're out there and you can't access some of these resources, or you can't communicate because you're in that tough of a spot, pick up the phone. Come by the office. I've sat down with folks. I've talked to them over the phone. We want to be as responsive and helpful as we can be, with the understanding that we may not have all the right answers or even answers that you like. But yeah. And again, I don't disagree. These rules and these regulations and the way these things come down are decided, and I don't mean to throw you all under the bus. They're decided at the state level and at the national level. And so, whether it's this law or another law, get involved with your government. Yeah, yeah. What can Charleston do to help? What can Charleston do to help was the question. I think, join us. I mean, the county has a standing committee that deals with these broadband issues. And, I'll make the suggestion that maybe a representative from Charleston be involved in that. We don't necessarily have anybody from the city of Cleveland, but doesn't mean we can't. I mean, we're all in this together. Charleston and Cleveland are, last time I checked, both inside the county limits of Bradley. So as far as I'm concerned, we're all in it together. Yeah. 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 But I think don't just stop. Don't just look at having a seat on that committee. What can you all do with your constituents in terms of informing them? What can you talk about in the city commission meetings to raise awareness and to get feedback? So I think the sky's the limit. Government hopefully has the ability to disseminate information easier than just a private citizen could. So I would take advantage of whatever means you have to communicate with your folks to try to make them aware of what's going on and what the challenges are and how they can help individually. I hope that answers your question. But if there's an idea you have, we'd love to talk about it too. So, anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much for being here tonight. As always, please grab what we've got up here if you want to take something with you and reach out later if you've got questions or need clarification on anything. Thank you so much.